This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Shice Podcast Network.
Well. Hello, Bad Movie Lovers, and welcome back to another episode of Bad Movies We Love. I am your host, Nick Scheist,
the master of this stupid stuff!
But you probably already know that because...
if you're listening to this, you are the Resistance.
And I want to give a quick shout out and thank you to Sean and Ben, who have been supporting the Resistance over at ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/bad movies we love. And of course, our new friend Michael Lewis as well, who has spread the gospel on social media. And that's a really easy way to support the show, to help. Word of mouth is the best medicine. That is absolutely not the right saying, but I'm going to go with it anyway, because I really believe word of mouth is a fantastic way to help the show with absolutely no monetary commitment. It's super easy and convenient on your end, and it helps people find the show. But that's enough of that for now, because I was rejoined by my buddy David Steele from Real Talks. We previously recorded an episode on The Running Man not all that long ago, and this time we're getting together for another Stephen E. Souza movie, and it's a surprise 30th anniversary celebration of Street Fighter from 1994.
It was so, I guess I would use the word corny.
The costumes are ridiculous, the set is ridiculous.
Action.
And right as they're about to fight, Guile busts in with his big-ass truck.
Because of you having so many characters, you really couldn't spend time with them.
The first time we're introduced to Bison, they're just bringing in soldiers, and he's just snapping necks.
Julia is the crown jewel of this whole movie.
He has a chandelier made out of human bones in his bedroom, and then he's putting on, like, soft jazz and trying to get laid.
Part 2 of this podcast needs to be Fancasting Street Fighter Part 2.
I'm not going home. I'm gonna get on my boat and I'm going upriver and I'm going to kick that son of a bitch Bison's ass so hard that the next Bison wannabe is gonna feel it. Now, who wants to go home and who wants to go with me?
David, welcome back to the show, man. It's good to see you. It's been a while since we sat down and talked about Running Man. That was maybe a year ago? I'm not even sure anymore. Time has flown since then, but welcome back. I appreciate you being here. We get to talk about another Stephen E. Souza movie today, and that is Street Fighter. And it's kind of awkward. I don't think you planned it that way. I didn't plan it this way. But here we are.
Yeah, I thank you for having me back, Nick. I had a blast the first time, and I'm sure I'm going to have a blast this time. And yeah, I was going through some of the writing credits as I was just making mention to you, and the fact that this guy wrote some of the biggest hits of the 80s in 48 Hours, and Die Hard, and The Running Man, it's just like, wow. But yeah, I had a blast with this.
Yeah, it's a little surprising when I saw his name pop up. I didn't remember it. Like this, I was 10 when this movie came out, so it wasn't something where I was like paying attention to the director. I kind of only knew Van Damme, and I was like, okay, I've seen Raul, Julia, and Addams Family at that point, but I wasn't really locked into all of the other production elements of this film. And I had seen it a bunch, but probably not since my teenage years. So it was really nice to sit down and revisit it and to see just like kind of how crazy of an idea this was to take on at the time. It feels like a story that's maybe more suited for something now, but I still had a lot of fun with it. Like as bad, I think, as it arguably is for real, it is a really enjoyable time. So thank
No,
you for
it's-
giving me the chance to do that.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where, he is, and something else to bring up too is the craze of the video game back then,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're around the same age. And in so in the early 90s, you had, all these fighting games, Street Fighter and Tekken was just making its move. And, this was a huge, huge, especially Street Fighter 2, the world champion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're taking what arguably one of the biggest characters of not only the game and inserting it into a movie. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I played a lot of Virtua Fighter at this time. Obviously, Street Fighter was a big one, specifically Street Fighter 2, and then all of the different editions of Street Fighter 2 that came out with it. But like you said, Tekken, I mean, Mortal Kombat was not too far down the line from this as well. So it's kind of like the heyday of sort of fighting games becoming super popular on like a mass appeal level. Because, like, to make a movie about a niche video game would be very difficult. So to consider how popular this game had to be in order to get it produced is impressive. And Capcom had to put up a lot of their own money and backing for this project because they really wanted it to get done. And I mean, they had a lot of influence over this, which maybe they shouldn't have had as a video game company. But I understand when it's like their IP is the one that is on the line here. They want it to be a certain way. And I'll ask you this, like, do you think the movie raised the stock of Street Fighter, the brand, or lowered it?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where it was a pretty big stock to be, I mean, pretty big IP to begin with. When you make a movie like this, nobody's expecting this to be a blockbuster. And I think that when you're having, especially what you just made mention of how Capcom really put a lot of their own money into it. So I don't want to say it lessened the brand, but I think it might have even actually raised the brand a little bit because you were able to get a big name such as Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, Capcom was
So
pretty set on him, interestingly enough, and they wanted the December release. So this ended up becoming a Christmas release movie. Like, this is something that you typically would release in summer when the kids who are Street Fighter fans are out and about. They can go to the movies. But then again, I mean, if it's Christmas break, they're going to have time off as well. You can make it kind of a family film type thing. But it was all tied in with the marketing of the toys to sell at Christmas. So all those things considered, like, it still did reasonably well, especially like worldwide, given the box office at the time. So it's odd to think that this movie is a success, but then is so widely considered a really, really bad movie. It has an IMDb score of 4.1, not good. Metascore of 34, even worse. Rotten Tomatoes critic score is 11%. The audience score is 20%. And Letterboxd has it at a 2.1, so similar to IMDb at that point. But that gives us a Bad Movies We Love amalgam score of 25.4. So it's I mean, there's probably lower ones, but since I've started sort of combining all the scores into one overall metric, this is the lowest one so far, but it's only the lowest out of 3. So that's not that's not a wide range.
it's just, it was so, I guess I would use the word corny.
Oh yeah.
There's so many corny things about this movie and just in general. Um, from the plot, do you have like the number of prisoners or delegates that he kidnapped, 63? I mean, like, who pulls that number? It's just, I mean, there's so many different things that it's not just one thing. It all adds up to wow. And when I went back and watched this and I did the video on it, and I basically said, is it as bad as it could be? And you got to understand, like, this was 95 minutes. I mean, it's an hour and 40. The TRT is 140 or an hour and 42 minutes total running time. And so throw the last 5 to 7 minutes out. It's only a 90-minute movie. And it's crazy. And it's like so many different things.
It is wild in the sense that when you ask that question, like, is this movie as bad as it could be? I think the answer is no. because in less capable hands with a worse cast, like this movie could be significantly worse. And I think what we get here is a movie that is like a lot of mismatched puzzle pieces. Like if you're trying to compose a picture of Street Fighter and then you're making a puzzle out of it, this is a puzzle that is composed of pieces from different puzzles, right? Because you're not adhering to Street Fighter 1 or 2 exactly. You're kind of venturing off into the Street Fighter 2 plus range. So you get characters like DJ in there and Cammy and I think T-Hawk. So all these characters that aren't like super popular or super famous in the games at the time that this movie is coming out. So you're really like stretching the IP pretty thin by including all these characters at Capcom's behest because they want to include all of their characters. But then you end up sort of like with throwaway characters like DJ who doesn't really do anything. T-Hawk's kind of in the background. Cammy is like, okay, she gets something to do at least, which gives her value. And she gets to be sort of like I think she actually is the lieutenant to Guile being the colonel. And they are the ones who wanted Van Damme. Like, it's a Japanese company that wants to make a movie that's a US movie, and they want somebody to play the most American character in the movie, and they go and they tell the studio that we want the muscles from Brussels. So there's so many different sort of like working elements here that I understand why the movie doesn't come together as like super cohesive. But given the circumstances, this movie is still a ridiculous amount of fun. And like I tried to watch it more of like it being self-aware that it's a comedy, and that definitely makes it more enjoyable. If you try to take it at face value as being serious, it does definitely fall apart. But when you can sit back and just understand that there was never really a path for this movie to be completely serious, then you can allow yourself enough suspension of disbelief to get on board and have fun with it. But you know, you and I had sort of talked about this movie here and there. I think you had mentioned it back when we did Running Man. And then June-Claude Van Damme was coming up, which I was celebrating on the show. And so we kind of just had this opportunity fall to us. So I'm really glad that it did. But is there a particular reason why like this movie stood out to you in like your own personal history? Is this something that like you were super excited for when it hit theaters? Is this something that like you watched a lot when you were younger?
I think it's a couple of things. Number one, I grew up playing. And so, I mean, I grew up playing video games all my life, but this was one of the games that I thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, I go to the arcade and play. I think the other thing is that, and you're right, there are some movies, and I had to do this last year with Fast X because I love movies. I've been watching movies for decades and decades, but there are some where you just need to turn your brain off. And when you turn your brain off, you're just like, okay, this is a popcorn movie. I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to have a good time. And this is one of those movies. And it's just between the dialogue, between how I would use the word campy, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's so campy. I think it's so over the top that it can be used. And like take Raul Julia's M. Bison, for example. One of the memes are out there, game over, and it's everything. But his performance, and you can get into this more, it's so over the top and it's so campy. And he did this for a lot of these actors too. They're doing now these roles for their kids.
Yeah.
Not to watch now because maybe they're 3 and 4 and they don't get it, but maybe 10 years from now. And it's like, check out what I did when you were, and like, whoa. And I think that's what, one of those roles that Julia did.
Yeah.
I
And
loved it.
he was diagnosed with stomach cancer and had undergone surgery for it already at that point when they were doing filming, and his family was with him on set. And yeah, he took this role to be able to sort of like, give his kids something, give them the experience of being on set with him. And, when I give his performance that context, I think I understand it a lot better. I think without question, he's the best part of this movie. And I think the role that he's playing is significantly different sort of than the roles that everybody else are playing, where he is playing this like so straight, so sincere, even though the script is ridiculous, the character is ridiculous. He's taking this at completely face value. And like there's some scenes in the movie where I'm watching and I'm like, how does he keep a straight face during this? Like the costumes are ridiculous, the set is ridiculous, all this stuff going on around him, like even the flipping of the cape behind him, or when you go into his suite and he's just got a collection of different M. Bison hats for all the different costumes he has. Like all of these little details about this character don't seem to add up into somebody that's like a serious threat, but he's playing it so straight that I had to just like sit back and watch him and just marvel at how wonderful of a performance this is. I would say that like the way I looked at it is if you sort of strip all the sort of junk out of it and you put him on stage and you sort of tone everything down, like he's playing this almost like a Shakespearean villain to a degree. And he does that so well. And he really just like buys into all the elements about that in a way that I think when you see like with Guile, like he's kind of quipping here and there and like he's meant to have a sort of like low key sense of humor about him. And a lot of the other characters maintain that as well, where it's like everything's sort of a tongue in cheek joke. But Raul Julia is like, no, I'm an evil dictator and I'm going to play this like I would if this was Shakespeare. And it's amazing.
It really is. It really is. His performance is just, it's one of those things where, and I think that's the other thing too. Like he plays, whether you look at Addams Family or Street Fighter or whatever, he plays everything the same way. Not to say he couldn't do comedy, but it's just the simple premise of when you have an actor like him, he approaches a role a certain way.
Yes.
And so when he approaches a role a certain way, he's always going to do the very best. Doesn't matter how campy, how crazy, how over the top the role may be. He's always going to do the very best he can. And we got the very best he had, playing this. And it's just, besides the ending, which, because let's face it, 2/3 of the film, Van Damme and, Bison they're interacting, but they're not face to face until the third act. He's talking with his cronies and, he's telling his prisoners, delegates, oh, okay, this is what's going to happen. He's dealing with Blanca. So you're getting to see the full, even the scene with Chung-Li, right? Where, she goes in as the reporter and it's like, she wants to get back at him and everything else. And,
horny M. Bison,
just
or
unbelievable.
he turns on the jazz and he pours her a drink and he switches to like his
lights
jacket.
the candles up, But that's the thing. You're thinking it has to be so over the top. And that was the thing. How could they make this so over the top that they could make it good? And that's, because let's face it, you're not going there for the acting. It was, it was a team up film that, everybody had their couple of minutes, and, Blanca got to, be a man again, as we see what happens to him. And, so it was just a good time all the way around. I would have been curious to see the reception of this. I never got to see it in the theaters, but I would be curious to see the reception of this in the theaters back then.
Yeah, I saw somebody had written about it recently that like they saw it and the whole theater sort of bought into the idea that this is a comedy and they had a great time with it. So I'm really glad to hear that it sort of had that kind of staying power over the years, where it's not necessarily a reappraisal, but I didn't even pay attention that we're in the 30th anniversary year of Street Fighter this year. And, a lot of the movies we cover are old, but I always seem to sort of miss the anniversary year by like a year or two. So it's nice to actually land on one exactly and to sort of enter the territory of reappraisal. Not that I would ever say that this movie is good, but I also don't feel that it's something to necessarily like be ashamed of in the way that like, oh, it's a bad movie. And I think the actress too that played Chun-Li said kind of the same thing. Ming Na-Wen. she was asked sort of in interviews, like, do you regret this decision? And like, she was embarrassed the first time she saw the film. And I think she was on ER at the time. The story is something like saw the premiere. She was sitting with George Clooney and she was like, oh my God, my career is over. And Clooney like told her something like, hey, it takes a lot to kill a career in Hollywood. And he's like, trust me, I would know. I was in Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. So since then, she's been able to sort of step it back and be like, you know what, like this was a worthwhile experience. So to see that like the cast has still maintained that for the most part is pretty endearing as well. And obviously, Julia on his way out in the world. I mean, the movie's dedicated to him because he died shortly after the filming of this movie, but he knows that like he's sick, he's undergone treatment, like he doesn't even back out of the project. Instead, he takes his family on location with him and gives like this gigantic, sweeping, sort of epic style performance in this role in a movie that like arguably doesn't deserve that from him, but we still get that from him, and it's awesome. And I'm glad that he's lived on in these memes because on the one hand, yes, there's very like quotable moments, there's very memeable stuff, but like if you go back and just watch him in the movie, he's amazing. So yeah. I'm really glad that I got to revisit it. But when was the last time that you saw this?
So the last time I saw this was when I watched it for my video. And so I sat down and I made a list of, as a matter of fact, I made a list of all of, or not all of, but a lot of anniversary films. In 1994 was a big year for a lot of different reasons, and Street Fighter was one of them. And I said, I hadn't seen this in a minute. Let me sit down and watch this. So I sat down and watched it and spent a couple hours, and then I'm just like, yes, this is a good time. Getting back to your point of careers, I was happening to look at the credits, and I went, Brian Mann, where have I seen him before? Oh, of course, I just turned on The Big Short the other day. And he is that investor when they go to Vegas, talking about Merrill Lynch and all the, things. So Brian Mann's while he may not have had a fantastic career, he's still appearing in feature films, big feature films. But yeah, so that was the last time I watched it. And the other thing too is this is I won't say a short film, but you got to remember back in today, where in length in film is a whole other topic for another time. But we're so used to these epic, sweeping 2.5 to 3 hour films. This was only an hour and a half, so you're in and out of the theater. There's something to be said about length of film. And the other thing too is I really don't think you could really. They drag this out as much as they could.
Oh yeah, this movie at 2 hours plus would be a slog.
Yeah. So it was, it's just, I had such a good, solid time, just in general with this. And it was a different time back then too, right? Getting back to what I was saying earlier, I still can't believe the same guy. So I read something, and I don't know if this is true or not. I wrote, because he did, write and direct this. So I I read that he wrote this in 24 hours. What do you think the validity of that is?
Having watched it last night, maybe.
I mean, I don't doubt it, but yeah. I mean, if that's true, God bless Steven.
Yeah.
The fact that he can write a screenplay in 24 hours, come up with these characters. I mean, because anybody who knows, movies today, knows you have to go through these treatments, and there's sometimes Bibles. Like Michael Mann, for example, not only does he talk about the character, he does the backstory of the character, what he's been doing for 20 years and everything else. And this is just like, okay, just write a paragraph. Okay, you're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm not sure, like, obviously anything that we read on the internet is, very, very precarious in terms of truthfulness. But
right,
I could definitely see the script being rushed and also not being super important to the story, because you really you need to plot out your action beats here and make sure your pace is okay. But really, the dialogue between the characters in this kind of movie, I don't feel needs to be sort of whittled down and reworked over and over again. It's something where, hey, you sort of just need to communicate that you guys want to escape this situation, or that you want to do this. Nothing about this movie, other than Raul Julia, would I stop and think twice about any of the dialogue choices. So I could definitely see it being rushed. Whether or not 24 hours is a, adequate time to be able to finish a full script treatment for this, no clue. But I will entertain the idea that that is accurate for the sake of this conversation.
Actually, so looking at some of the little trivia, getting back to your point about Shakespearean tone from Julia. So it says, I'm on IMDb, so it says, for the role of M. Bison, he used various dictators and crime lords and their lives and their personalities, mimicking traits from them, whether it's Mussolini with their hand gestures, Stalin's mannerisms, Escobar, his elusiveness, Hitler's love of art. And it's just the fact that he was able to put all these different things and put him into his own and make him his own, I think speaks to the genius of Raul Julia.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like he's dying. And you know what? The last thing I'm going to do is research a bunch of dictators from around the world and their personality traits, their mannerisms, their style choices. And I'm going to fold that. He's doing so much work for this movie. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that this movie deserved that level of commitment from him, but we get to see he deserved it for himself. So I'm glad that we have that on film, because I think, without a movie like this that is able to showcase him, maybe even accidentally to a degree, we maybe don't still talk about this movie in the same light. If you take him out of that, or if he really is so sick that he's sort of mailing in his performance at that point, I don't know that we are having this discussion 30 years later about how bad this movie is, but how much we love it still.
Yeah. It's just, this is, okay. This is one of those movies too. It's I haven't seen it, so I'd have to sit down and watch it. Maybe I'll come back and do this one. Super Mario Brothers with
John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins.
And Bob
Dennis
Hoskins.
Hopper.
And it's of course everybody knows it was based off of Mario and Nintendo. But that's the other thing too. Back then, the movies were different in the simple respect of they tried to use television shows too, but not only video games, but television shows. And the IP back then was not as it good was and is good today. Have you? I'm just curious, off topic, real quick. Have you seen Super Mario Brothers?
Oh, of course, I love Super Mario Brothers.
Okay, I have to sit down and watch Super Mario Brothers.
I couldn't help myself from thinking about Super Mario Brothers while watching this movie, more in physical style. They had to build a lot of practical sets, the kind of ideas transferring a video game that's very cartoonish to real life. You sort of have to take some liberties with that. And that movie, we get a very good villainous turn from Dennis Hopper as Bowser, King Koopa, whatever he goes by in that movie. And that movie also sort of understands the assignment that you can't make it the video game. So you have to try your best to adhere to whatever the vision is going to be. And just watching them both visually, I saw a lot of striking similarities.
Yeah. So, I'm going to have to sit down and watch that. By the way, the fact that you just said Dennis Hopper and Super Mario Brothers, now I'm absolutely in.
You have to.
Absolutely,
he's such a good, slimy villain.
The thing is, because people, I think of video games today and they want masterpieces.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it was, Doom was its own thing back in the 90s with The Rock, but you look at any video game adaptation for the last 15 years, they want masterpieces. And that is the Rubik's Cube that has really been trying to be solved. And not that you were going to get it done with this, but it's like to see the evolution of it, I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, at the time where this stuff was coming out, video games were still sort of, adhering.
Rudimentary.
Yeah, exactly. They're still adhering to a certain like visual style and actual like capabilities limitations. Where now it's like you get a game like Ghost of Tsushima where it's like the whole thing is like a Kurosawa movie. So if you adapt it at that point, you already have good material to start with, and then you can work from there. Like God of War would make a good movie as well. So like you're just working with a different deck of cards back in the 90s than you would be now. And I think like Resident Evil is a good intermediate because that was like very good story, but the original game was limited very much in its physicality. And then all the adaptations of Resident Evil over the years, they've always struggled to really just nail down what was already a good video game story and retell it on screen. And they've always like spun all these other things into it. And it's not that I don't like the Mila Jovovich Resident Evil, but similar to Street Fighter, that movie comes out at a time where it's basically supposed to be Resident Evil 1, but they're folding in ideas from like Resident Evil 2 and 3 at that point. So you're not starting at the beginning, you're starting at a point in history where you're sort of pulling all this information from other games and trying to tell it as if it is Resident Evil 1, but then abandoning a lot of the core story elements of what was the first Resident Evil movie. So, or the first Resident Evil game, I should say. So then there's been reworkings of that. They've done a bunch of animated Resident Evil movies as well. Obviously, the Mila Jovovich one was popular, spawned like 5 or 6 sequels, and that franchise went on for a long time. So it's not like it is without its strengths, right? It's just, it's not what the game is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And Street Fighter I would argue Street Fighter is more popular than this than ever today.
Yeah, probably. I mean, they're on what, Street Fighter like 6 right now?
Yeah, and it's so, to your point though, is the graphics, the gameplay, the story, everything else. Yeah, and that's the other thing too, that something to bring up too is like a lot of these characters that you made mention of, like well, not a lot, but like Belrog, he was so anybody who anybody who played the game, I'm sure everybody has that's listening, is that there were 8 fighters, okay, that you had to go through. So you picked a fighter and then you went through and you fought the other 7, okay? Once you beat all the other 7, there were 4 brand new characters that came up. Bison was always going to be there, but there were 4 other characters that came up. Vega was one of them. Balrog was one of them. Sagat was one of them.
Yeah.
And there was another one. And so those were like the bonus characters you had to fight, and then you could go fight Bison. So what it seemed to me was like, to your point, they wanted to incorporate everybody into one movie because they knew, unfortunately, we didn't get a second one. So what did you think about the end credit scene?
The one that was released for the straight to video, or not the straight to video, but the video release where Bison isn't dead at the end.
Yes.
And his artificial assistant. It's like, hey, do you want to start your day all over again, Mr. Bison? And just chooses world domination and pops up out of the ground. I mean, we were ready for a sequel, but I mean, they knew Raul Julia wasn't coming back.
Unfortunately.
It's a weird little like Easter egg to drop there. But I mean, shit, if they made it, I would have watched it.
I would have watched it too. I would have absolutely watched it. I would love to see, if no studio would ever do this, I would love to see a Street Fighter today. I think it could be made today. I mean, if you did Mortal Kombat, which came out the next year, and that was, I mean, let's face it, I've seen both versions. And the 95 version, just the theme song and, just over the top, just like Street Fighter. And then you had the newer one come out a couple years ago. The only difference was it was more story based. It was a little more violent, which people wanted to see and everything else.
It took itself
but
more
I think
seriously.
I think you could absolutely do a Street Fighter today. and have it work.
You could. You just need the right people in play to make it happen. How do you feel about taking a stab, doing the honors with the synopsis haiku for Street Fighter 1994?
So glad you. So I sent you this the other day.
You did.
Because I actually. So I had to look up. It's been years. Truth be told, it's been years I've been in school.
I'm torturing everybody
with
this.
And everything else. And I actually had to look up what a haiku was. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm at lunch the other day at work. I'm like, and I'm typing this out on my phone. And I sent this to you. And I'm like, oh, okay, it works. So it's 575. So Bison declares war. Van Damme as Guile plays corny. AN saves world.
Yeah. Well done, sir. Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about like a plot for this movie, it's Street Fighter. There's not much to latch on to. But I mean, I know we've glossed over it a little bit at this point, but for all the like, for everybody else out there, like when you look at this movie, how do you think other people who view it as a bad movie perceive it? Like, what do they latch onto as like, this is the reason that it's bad?
I think the acting. I don't think it's a story because we've seen more war stories. Doesn't matter who the two conflict people are. I think it's the acting. I think it's the over the topness, the corniness of it. The speech. The guy walks up and says, "Okay, I'm going to shut you down right now," and then Van Damme gets up to the podium and says, "Let's go, team!" And everybody rushes out. And I mean, or as you made mention, the whole Chun-Li and Bison thing. We can all agree that I think Julia really hit a home run with this. This was only made for, I think, something like $18 million. So I think people would just look at this as a fun, corny, over-the-top movie. And as it should be looked at, too. Yeah. Not everything's going to be a masterpiece. And that's important to really know because everybody that worked on this film tried their hardest. And yes, there were problems here and there. And as the 1%, that's what gets put on film. And hopefully you hit a home run. But, it's like, it's just a good time. It's a turn your brain off, popcorn, sit down, and have a good time for 90 minutes.
And I did. That's exactly what I did last night. I was surprised that it's not streaming anywhere, so I had to rent it. So Street Fighter got $4 of my dollars last night. So I'm happy to support it all these years later. Yeah. It feels like a movie that I might own, but I really would have to look through the collection. I don't think I have it, but now that it's the 30th, maybe one of these like boutique labels is going to put out a Street Fighter 4K, which I think given the set building that went on in this and the costuming, the 4K might actually do it some favors, but I don't know that there's enough appetite out there to release a Street Fighter 4K.
I think so.
There is?
Believe it or not, Nick, I do. Because, like I was saying, so Universal actually had something to do with it. But more importantly, here's the thing. You have a lot of video gamers out there now.
This is true.
More video gamers than you had back in 1994.
Yeah.
It's more in the zeitgeist. It's more, Van Damme is now not only is he a generational talent to certain, but he's more known for, his little dance and everything else. And it's like, even he would love to see a 4K version of this. And I think, honestly, unfortunately, physical media is starting to go away. So, but it's one of those things where I think if a 4K got put out, I think it'd sell like hotcakes.
It might even exist already. I'm not sure, but let me see.
So, I mean, this is one of those things that people, and the other thing too is people, I won't say like bad movies, but they like campy movies. whether it is a Super Mario Brothers, whether it is a Street Fighter. I mean, the one I'm thinking of, the other one off the top of my head is The Devil's Advocate. You know, with Al Pacino is the devil. You know, it's so over the top. It's so crazy that people go, yeah, I'll buy into that. So
I do see that there is a Street Fighter Steelbook that's $35 Blu-ray, but it is not 4K. So now that it's 30 years, so Universal, I don't know that you have the rights to even do this anymore, but please, for us out here in Street Fighter support groups, please take the time and release the 4K. I'll buy it, even if you only sell one. You'll sell it to me.
Just make the one dedicated to Nick, you know, personalize it.
Yeah, please. That'd be awesome.
Now I think I'm going to have to start something, you know, we're going to have to start a movement, Nick.
We will.
We're going to have to start a movement.
Universal,
And,
if anybody out there that
Street
works
Fighter,
there.
release Street Fighter on 4K.
That's right. If anybody out there is listening, we're about to pester you on social media until this gets done. So buckle up. But I think now is probably a good time to go back. We look at the trailer on this show, and let's take a look back all the way, roll the clock back to 1994, and take a look at what this movie was trying to do for us, or at least what the ads were trying to do for this movie at the time that it came out. Before we get to that trailer, a quick word from our sponsor. Good morning, Shadaloo! Did you hear the AN blew up an ancient Burmese temple and toppled General Bison? You can still see the smoke from downtown Yangon. So Bison bucks aren't worth the paper they're printed on anymore, but I've heard some rumblings about a new blockchain Bison coin, so keep your eyes open. If you were lucky enough to escape the AN raids with your life or minimal injuries, remember that maintaining your health plan benefits is your responsibility, and you probably want to see a doctor before your insurance claims get rejected. Have you seen those new photos posted on Shadaloo Social? Well, rumor has it there's a green-skinned monster down there. Really makes you think twice before you flush. We'll be covering those stories and all the news that's unfit to print tomorrow on Good Morning Shadaloo. And now, back to Bad Movies We Love. There we go.
After 7 months of fighting, the civil war in Shadaloo may have reached the turning point. The capital has just fallen.
In December 1994,
Ooh, the
the
trailer
forces
guy.
of freedom will face a power-mad dictator
I'll have
in
to
a
tell you about
struggle
that
for
in a
the
minute.
fate of the world.
Get a lot of soldiers, explosions, lots of explosions. That cape.
Yep.
Alright, so they're definitely name dropping the characters.
Yep.
They know the core audience is going to be the people that are playing the game.
Game over!
It's cool.
Got boats, trucks, explosions, lots of jumping.
I don't think so.
It's a good edit.
I love the platform.
His floating platform.
Okay.
Now, who wants to go home and who wants to go with me?
Oh, man.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
that's
exactly what you would think.
But see, something I noticed in that trailer, a couple of things. Number one, and maybe it was just the way it was shot. So Starship Troopers, movie that came out a couple years later. You noticed when they did something for television, they always zoomed in like that. That was the first thing I noticed. I mean, besides the text and everything else. But the other thing I noticed too, you didn't have a lot of dialogue.
No.
Right?
We can't show that to the
few little
audience.
segments where M. Bison's at, and then, you know, you had Guile there. But there wasn't a lot of talking. It wasn't 2 minutes. It was just name after name after name after name, action scene after action scene after action scene. So it was one of those things where you didn't need a lot to introduce it, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think whoever's cutting the trailer for this, the audience you're marketing to, this is an action film. So we see a lot of like jump kicks being thrown, a lot of things exploding. We get the sort of I'm going to kick Bison's ass line, immediate edit into the I don't think so. And I think that's a great edit. But yeah, there's not much talking at all. We're going to leave the talking to the guy that we hired to do trailer voice for us.
And it sets up in the first. One thing that I noticed too is they took a little, it wasn't as long as Star Wars, but they took a little crawl. December 1994. So immediately within the first 10 seconds, they're putting you right in the film. They're telling you when it's happening. They're telling you what's going on. They're telling you who's the villain. And then the next shot, winner takes all, you see everybody rush the beach. So it's like, okay, we're already in the action. So that was halfway decent too.
Yeah. I guess I want to ask you, do you view like this Street Fighter movie as taking place within our reality, or isn't this like another parallel reality where it's kind of like real life, but like this other empire exists?
Yeah. Probably somewhere else. I mean, because without getting too deep into it, I mean, you look at like what the world was like in 1980, like what was going on, how everything was going on. I mean, and I think it could have been in another little corner of the world that we just didn't know about, and this was going on. So okay, sure. I think that's definitely a reality in that respect. So yeah, it could have been going on back in 1994. And somewhere where we, a little corner of the world that we didn't know about.
Yeah, it's like I never stopped to think whether or not like Street Fighter is set in sort of like our universe, because this movie doesn't really spend time anywhere. I don't think Shadaloo's a real place. If it is, my bad. But like with Mortal Kombat, like we spend time in the real world, and then hey, now we're going to Otherworld, Outworld, whatever it's called in Mortal Kombat. And so there's like a clear distinction that we're leaving the old world behind and moving into sort of the Mortal Kombat movie world. And here it's like, okay, well, this is like kind of close to the real world, but not close enough where we're going to actually involve actual places. So I was just like, okay, well, maybe if I can accept that they're not even trying to connect to reality, which may be like a sticking point for some people. Like maybe you're an adult who's reviewing this movie at the time it comes out. That means you're probably not a Street Fighter player. So when you go to see the movie, you're like, what is this? Like, we're just being introduced to Shadaloo, like with very little backstory, and this dictator has taken over this other world. Okay, I guess I'm on board. And then Jean-Claude shows up with an American flag on his arm with the thickest
Don't forget the tattoo.
Belgian accent that you can possibly imagine.
A screenwriter talked to me, I took a screenwriting class once, and he said, look, if you can have the audience make one leap and only one leap, then you've done your job. But when you start, if you can have them make one leap and suspend in disbelief, and make one leap, whatever it is, whether it's where it's at, the characters, the timeline, you've done your job. But you can't have it do it over and over because it'll take them out. So when we get dropped into this, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, sure, I believe that it's this country at this time, because they could have said, look, it's 2024. Doesn't mean it's not, I mean, when films, that's the other thing too, is when films have years attached to them. Take one of the films we did, The Running Man. Mm-hmm. That had a film, I forgot the exact, I want to say it was 2019 or whatever it was. But you could see that. Now, the first thing you do is you think back to 2019. Like, could this really happen back in 2019? And then you go, okay, maybe if it does. And then you start to see everything go, okay. So, yeah, it's a touch and go type of thing.
Yeah,
so what I was going to say is about the movie trailer. Mm-hmm. If you decide to go to my page real quick on YouTube, Real Talks, you're going to see the movie trailer. If you can't, I can't convince you to actually join, subscribe. Guys, check out who's there. It's the movie trailer guy.
He's there.
So I actually got him to do a thing about the channel.
Oh, nice.
Talking about perfect movies, so the movie channel guy actually did that. So it's about 45 seconds, but it's great.
Awesome. I'll make sure that the link is up there for anybody that's listening to this so you can check out David's page. When we're looking at not only suspension of disbelief, because I'm willing to just be like, okay, this is going in some other world, right? And then, all right, I'm in this world. We're telling the story of Street Fighter. We're at about 15 minutes into the movie, and Ryu is about to fight Vega in the cage. And it's like, okay, we get Ryu, classic character, probably the lead character of the game. Vega, one of the most prominent villains in the game. We get a showdown fight early in this movie. And right as they're about to fight, Guile busts in with his big ass truck, cuts him off. So in a movie called Street Fighter, when we're about to see the two characters fight, which would sort of mimic the game in a way that makes it rewarding to the game players, we don't get that. We're stripped of that so that Guile can bust in with his truck. And I'm like, okay, maybe that won. But then the longer the movie goes, it's not until like 50 minutes into the movie that Chun-Li and Bison have the fight in his suite or his bedroom or whatever it is. Because, I mean, like, you know, the Ken and Ryu get arrested at that underground fight. They end up a couple minutes later having like a prison brawl. So you get some fighting. But the idea is something that I think Mortal Kombat did, where they latched onto what the notion of the film was better, where they isolated individual characters and we're going to have showdown fights between these characters. And so Mortal Kombat had obviously the benefit of watching this movie and learning from it and being like, hey, we don't want to make these same kinds of mistakes and we want to adhere to things in a different way. So you get like, why can I not think of the main? Kung Lao? No, Liu Kang. Liu Kang is the main character in Mortal Kombat. He gets his showdown fight with Sub-Zero. Johnny Cage and Scorpion have their battle. Like, that's what I want to see from a movie.
Don't forget Sonya and Kano.
Exactly. So it's like those kind of iconic one-on-one fights are the kind of things I think I would want to see for a Street Fighter movie that just kind of don't really exist for the majority of it. We get some later in the film where it's like, okay, now we're starting to get these matchups that make sense. But up until the final act of the film, like, this is really a typical sort of action movie with car chases and explosions and boats, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm just curious, like, where the drop off was there for Souza. But that would make sense if you wrote it in 24 hours. Like, you're not really maybe a fan of the game, even you don't latch on to the identity of the characters and what people who play the game actually get out of it. It is the one-on-one fights that we want to see. So I think that is maybe something that fell through the cracks a little bit too much. We get it in the end when it matters. So it's like, at least we sort of get a bow on it there at the end. But I sort of was taking notes along the way. Like, how are we almost an hour into this movie and there has not been a one-on-one fight of any kind?
So I do agree with you that you want to tease, because let's face it, it's always the tease. You want to tease the audience just enough and then pull back. So when the thing breaks in, okay, fine, they get arrested, they go to prison, says you have to come work for me. Okay, fine, they break out. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head is there was too many characters.
Yeah.
You had too many characters in this film because if you take a look at what the most recent Mortal Kombat did, they only had a couple characters. Okay, they had Scorpion, they had Sub-Zero, they had Johnny Cage, and I think they had Sonya in it, which was perfect because they could isolate and focus on their characters. The other thing too is this had way too many characters. Okay, I mean, you put Ryu in there, Ken in there, which you had to. You put Guile in there, which you had to. But Sagat didn't need to be in there. Vega didn't need to be in there. Zangief had to. You know, I mean, I think they could have taken a couple of characters out and actually saved them for the second film if they were going to do a second film. But I think that Capcom, to your point, also realized that, look, we got one bite of the apple, and we've got to put as many people in there as possible. And if you had had individual fights between whether it was Ken and this person, or Ryu and this person, or so, whatever, it would have been problematic because you would have spent all your time trying to set up all these different fights and then do it and not spend any time with Bison. And that was the whole premise, right? His whole premise was, okay, I'm taking the 63 delegates, crazy number, 63 delegates hostage to prove a point. I want all this money or I'm going to kill them. So, you're right. At the end, we did get the showdown between Guile and Bison, but I agree with you, though. I mean,
yeah, ultimately, I'm glad that we spend so much time with Bison because he's the most charismatic person in the film and his screen presence is undeniable. So I'm not really like upset that we get all of that. I'm just thinking in my head of like, okay, you're making a movie based on this IP, yet you're not really like adhering to what the IP does and what people are in it for. So I'm trying to sort of like connect the dots of like, hey, how did this movie get received so poorly and like what its actual weaknesses are? And what are the things that I actually like about it, given the weaknesses? And so that was something where I'm like, yeah, I want to see these guys actually fight for a change rather than just like have explosions and car chases and all this other story. Like just that setup of Ryu going into the den and in the pit with Vega in the cage, right? You could still have them fight and maybe even have Sagat involved and they're like part of this crime organization. And then the fight gets broken up by Guile busting in, Sagat and Vega being the criminals that they are. They run, Ken and Ryu get arrested, and then you move on from there and those characters are not in the rest of the movie. But we're always going back to Sagat and Vega throughout the course of the film, where it's like they're kind of just forced into the story where they don't need to be.
I think that you could have only used one of them.
Yeah, you could.
I think you could have saved the other one for another film if push came to shove. And once again, this goes back to my point. I think they put too many people in this film, but they had to because Capcom and Universal knew, look, this isn't going to be I mean, this made just a shade under $100 million worldwide, but it's like with an 18 million, they knew they weren't going to. I mean, I'm sure they had plans to make a second one, but it was how much money they were really going to invest in it. So they had to put all their eggs in one basket and then just go from there. And because of you having so many characters, you really couldn't spend time with them to really get to know them. I mean, you knew that Chun-Li was a reporter. You knew that E Honda was, the sidekick there. You knew, Ken and Ryu. Everybody had a tag team, a buddy.
Yeah.
Right. So you had Sagat and Vega. You had E Honda and Chun-Li. You had Ken and Ryu. You had Guile and Cammy. So everybody had a little tag team. And then, you had Bison, who was all by himself. So they eventually ended up turning.
Bison had DJ and Zangief.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
Dr. Dalsum.
So,
by force.
Yeah. So I think there was just too many people in there.
Yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen kind of situation. But, there's only so much that the director can do when the studio and the financiers are like, look, this is what it's going to be. You just have to work with what's available. And so, okay, I'm willing to accept that the studio had their hands in this too much and they weren't going to let de Souza do what he ultimately probably would have wanted to do with the script. Maybe leads him to only like not care about the script and like I'm just going to write to the action points of the film. We'll do what Capcom wants and we'll get everybody some dialogue. We'll get everybody some screen time. By the end of it, we get the E Honda Zangief fight. We get Ryu fighting Sagat and Vega, and then eventually Ken joins in there. So we get like that showdown. We obviously get Cammy and I think T-Hawk. They're fighting mercenaries mostly. They're not actually like fighting other primary characters. So, and then Blanca and Dalsum don't really ever get that moment too much. They're just kind of like, oh, he's a monster and I'm the doctor that created him. And they get involved, but not to the point where I think
Blanca does have a redeeming moment.
He does, but I had to
ask myself, as much as he could.
Yeah,
So
I had to ask myself though, like, why does Bison even need to make Blanca? You know, the first time we're introduced to Bison, they're just bringing in soldiers for him. They're like, go ahead, fight me hand to hand. And he's just snapping necks, just easily defeating all of them one on one, no problem. So I'm like,
well,
why
he
does he
wants
need
boxes.
why does he need to create a superhuman monster?
Yeah, I mean, but that just goes to show you because he's an evil genius.
That's how
because
evil
he's
he
an
is.
evil genius that has a floating platform that has lightning, coming out of his fingertips that can snap people's necks into, nothing like a twig. And it's like, okay, so the fact that he can just sit back on his little platform and watch all these super shoulders, take over the world and do his work for him,
I mean, I realize I'm
one of
asking
those,
questions that probably shouldn't be targeted at this movie, but at the same time, these are questions that I had to ask myself watching the movie because it's like it's so ridiculous that I had to ask, like, why make this decision for this movie? Like, why include this and not hand-to-hand combat? And it's the 90s and maybe just the right people aren't involved in the movie to maximize this. And then the more I read about it, because of the scheduling conflicts and the difficulties with both Van Damme and Raul Julia's disease, that a lot of the scenes were like choreographed right before they were shot. So the stunt trainer doesn't have time to actually adhere to anything before throwing these people into their combat scenes. So he's like, look, I trained them to fight like they're actual people, because I think it was De Souza was like, where's all the moves from the video game?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, I can't train them to do that in an hour.
A couple, but no, I get it. Yeah.
It's so ridiculous when I think about sort of like how difficult it must have been to make this movie. I mean, you're filming a lot like on location in Thailand too, so it's like hot and sweaty. The rumors are that like JCVD is like in his hotel just doing lines of coke, like he's not showing up on time. He's hard to work with.
$10,000 worth of
$10,000 a week just snorting blow, and then he would show up on set with booze and he's like being unprofessional.
Not to mention having an affair with the co-star
Kylie Minogue. Yeah, so he married at the time. Just like a disaster sort of scenario to try to make a movie in. And to a degree, it survives all of that. But I think you can also see a lot of the turmoil and a lot of the struggle outside of the film made its way onto the set. And it's a little bit unavoidable, like when your star is involved in as much of it as possible. And like the more I do Jean-Claude Van Damme, the more I read about Van Damme being a pain in the ass on set, which points back to a lot of rumors that I heard around the 90s as well about him being difficult to work with. And it's like, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but every time I read more trivia about each of these movies, there's many, many notes about him being a pain in the ass. So, one of the stories that sort of comes out of this is that the success of this movie led, I think it was Universal wanted to do a 3-picture deal with him, and they offered him $12 million a movie, and he turned it down. Well, he didn't turn it down. He demanded 20 because Jim Carrey was making 20.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, goodbye. And like, man, you had a 3-picture deal lined up. Like your career was there on the table despite all of these problems that you had created, and he threw it away like for ego purposes, which is crazy.
Yeah. I would have been curious to see. So there was another big action star during the 90s that I'd be curious to see what a Chuck Norris-led Street Fighter would have looked like.
At least, I mean, if you were telling me that like he's the all-American Colonel Guile, I would have been like, all right, I buy into that.
Because Norris was still, I mean, throughout the 80s and the 90s, he was huge.
He was doing like what, Walker at this point?
He was doing Walking Texas Ranger, but I mean, he had his string of movies. But it's like that would have been interesting to see. I mean, not that I thought he would have done any better than Van Damme, but I don't think he would have had the problems.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have been sort of sucked into the quicksand that seems to be Van Damme on set a little bit. But like he still is charismatic on screen. I think, you needed an actor who you could actually film doing the flip kick confidently and sell it. And Guile is like a kick-heavy character in the game a lot of the time. So, you need somebody who leans into that, and Capcom was like, hey, you're gonna be our guy, so that's what it's gonna be, and we're just moving on. Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing too is there isn't a lot of other people out there at that time. You only had 2 or 3 people that could really do that, right? You had Jean-Claude Van Damme, you had Chuck Norris, and you had Steven Seagal. That's it. So that were major martial arts fighting action stars. So, and I wouldn't be shocked if they approached either one of them. They turned it down and just didn't want to do it, whether it was money or time or whatever. Be like, oh. And so Van Damme was probably, the third, one of the 3 choices. But,
yeah. I mean, it makes total sense. I'm not sure why they decided to make Guile's hair rose gold. It's like he has such an iconic haircut in the game.
The blonde.
Yeah, the blonde, weird, flat top. I mean, when we look at Balrog, like they gave him game authentic hair, like they put a ball cap on him that like goes back to like almost behind his ears with a very sharp widow's peak in the middle. So it's like they made the effort for that, but they don't even make Jean-Claude bleach blonde. They don't give him a flat top of any kind. They just sort of like colored his hair like strawberry blonde. And I was like, what is that? Like those kind of decisions. I don't know if like he couldn't be bothered to show up for hair and makeup, or they like, hey, we want to make your hair blonde. He says no kind of thing, which I wouldn't be surprised either based on everything I read. But it was just like all of these little details of why is your camouflage blue? What are you trying to blend in with, the sky or the ocean?
Yeah.
Like you guys are in the middle of like a jungle in Thailand. This doesn't help you. But then, of course, Bison's guys, they're wearing like red and black camo, so it's like that doesn't help you blend into anything either.
Like the costume design. I mean, you had to have costume design, but I mean, when you have a budget of $18 million, you said it yourself. You're stretched so thin, so it's like, okay, what do we invest our money in? Do we invest our money in costumes? Do we invest our money in, all these other things, or hair and makeup type of things? Because let's face it, it's not like you dye somebody's hair and then you have to go back depending on how long was the shoot. Does it say how long was the principal photographer?
I didn't read anything, about how long it was. I'm sure it's in there somewhere, but it's nothing. It's nothing that's stuck out to me.
40, 45 days. But it's like you have to put your money somewhere. So, and then I think a lot of it, got spent on location.
Yeah, obviously a lot of it was location shooting. I think a lot of it was the sets, because they had to build like the temple set and then blow it up. They had to build all the interiors for everything. Obviously the costumes of everything. I mean, I'm sure Bison's costume alone was expensive, because like seems like a real leather cape. They gave him a full leather outfit. Like I'm sure all that was not cheap. You go into Bison's bedroom, you had to have some costume designer design like 10 different Bison hats, a Bison smoking jacket. He has a chandelier made out of human bones in his bedroom, and then he's putting on like soft jazz and trying to get laid. I'm like, this is amazing. I wish the whole movie was just Bison, because he's awesome in this, and all the decisions around him are insane. But because of the way that Raul Julia plays the character, it works in a way that a lot of the other things in the movie don't. And I was like, am I really seeing this? Like, it's so good.
It's just, and there's nobody. So we talk about films that like there's no other actor that could have played this role.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like Han Solo or, Harrison Ford and certain things. There is no other actor at that time that I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe you can, Nick, that could have played that character better.
Julia? No, I know that they wanted Stephen Lang to do that.
Okay.
And like he would have been interesting, but I like that Raul Julia is like a more exotic, because Bison, like if he's going to be sort of like an otherworldly warlord, like a dictator from a country that like we don't know kind of thing, I think he needs to be a little bit more exotic. And Julia brings that to the role, where Stephen Lang wouldn't like hell make Stephen Lang Guile at that point. Like I would buy that more than I bought Van Damme as Guile. So yeah, I don't like looking back to that era. I don't necessarily know, but like now, I would say like Javier Bardem would be good.
Yes, he'd be
Bison.
perfect.
Yeah, that would be sort of like my dream recasting of that character if we were going to do it again.
Part 2 of this podcast needs to be fan casting. Street
Yeah.
Fighter Part 2. We're going to have all these different names, and we're going to say, okay, this is who we want to play Guile, this is what we want to play Gammy.
Yeah.
We're going to redesign everybody.
Somebody got to teach Glenn Powell to do a backflip because right now he's the it guy. I could see him as Guile, the all-American blonde. Yeah, and he's young enough too where it's like I could buy into it. It's not like, oh, let's get Liam Neeson into one of these roles. Liam Neeson might actually be a good Bison though. Like he's a little bit older. He wouldn't have to be as physical. We could sort of rely on his acting.
We could bring Scarlett back to play Cammy. Okay,
I can see that.
We can get somebody from like the UFC who's definitely going to be a fight. We could either have them be the fighter or Balrock, or we could have them. We'd have to have a good dynamic duo for Ken and Ryu.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking like Alex Pereira, the current 205 champ in the UFC. Yeah. He would be a good Sagat. He's already bald. Yeah. He's big. He's Brazilian. So, you could have him throw some knees in there.
We got this, Nick.
We got this. Who's got the rights to Street Fighter right now? Because whoever does should be taking notes and working on the remake of this. But yeah, so one of the things that like I had to ask myself, it's like a stupid throwaway joke, but Bison's offering people money and then it turns out that it's like Bison dollars. And I was like, he didn't go with Bison bucks. Like it's right there. He chose Bison dollars. And then we see later, like the whole crate that DJ steals is full of this Bison money with his face on it. And I mean, hey, it's decent looking currency, but it all has no value until he completes his plan for world domination. And he's so confident the whole time until the very end where he sees like the troops on the beach and DJ's behind him and he's like, DJ, we're gonna face this together as warriors on the battlefield. And DJ's running off in the background. But like Bison was just so confident and so in control the entire time until the very end when he even discovers the stealth boat. Like the stealth boat doesn't even necessarily work the way that they wanted to. So he beats him there. They get into hand-to-hand combat and it's like, okay, he gets beaten, but then he gets electrified and we get the whole, it's merely superconductor electromagnetism. Surely you've heard of it. Like the line delivery of that is so great as he's explaining what this is to Guile while he's kicking his ass. He's like, oh, it levitates trains. It levitates my desk, which I ride in the saddle of the world. I'm like, this is nuts. Like, I don't know if he ad-libbed the majority of this stuff or if he was in on like script rewrites, but compared to all the other characters, like he actually sort of has dialogue that makes sense for his character. And I'm like, I just want to watch him again. Like, let me just cut the movie down to just all Bison scenes and I'm good to go. But yeah, like him lecturing Guile on what this technology is after he was just brought back from the dead is gotta be one of the best moments, if not the best moment in the movie.
Absolutely. We need to get an M. Bison origin story. That's what we need. That's you guys want to actually do and really resurrect the Street Fighter type of franchise. You need to first put together an M. Bison origin story, where he grew up, how he became who he became, his rise to power, and, goes to all these colleges, he's super smart, type of thing. And then, he becomes a dictator of this country. And then, and then we need to have, a couple of other things. And then you have the street, you have the Avengers like movie and then have everybody go fight him because that's the only way. That would actually be fascinating.
It would be. I like the sound of that much better than the idea for this, but nobody's going to make that movie anytime soon. So maybe we'll get the opportunity to make it one day.
And the thing is, you can recreate it all yourself. Like you don't have to. There's no. I mean, unless I'm wrong, but maybe there is, and I haven't looked it up. But the whole idea of M. Bison, where he was born and why he did what he did and where he went to school and everything else, you can create that whole thing.
Yeah.
So the imagination can run wild. You can either make it serious or you can make it as campy as that. So.
Yeah, he seems like a kid who was raised sort of like as a Nazi at the time where sort of Nazi Germany was falling apart. So he went into exile, had to hide all that. But then when he got the opportunities, like, see, I've been a Nazi the whole time and I still want world domination. So yeah, I could totally buy into a Bison origin story. And I think that would be a lot of fun, actually. Okay. You feel like this is a good time to stop and do some trivia?
Time for trivia.
Excellent. Okay, I like the sound of that. So I haven't fully fleshed out the next idea that I'm working on for this show, but one of the things I am working towards is when we do trivia, the number of questions that we get right are going to then be used as bonus spins on the wheel of additional questions. So at the end of the show, I would typically ask for like, hey, what's a good gateway drug type of movie for Street Fighter? And I like that question, but there's other questions I want to ask, and I want to make sure that I'm able to sort of extend those questions to my guests. So now that's going to be one of several questions on the wheel. And so when we're done with trivia, we'll get a couple of spins of that wheel and you'll get a crack at a couple of those questions that I think are going to be fun and add a little texture sort of to the end of the show. But let's get the ball rolling on trivia, shall we?
Yes.
Okay. So, question number 1. Director Stephen E. DeSouza is a renowned screenwriter who has credits for Die Hard, Ricochet, like you said, 48 Hours, Commando, right? And the aforementioned Running Man, which we have covered on the show already. But he only directed one other feature film. What was that film?
I know he did Tales of the Crypt. I don't know off the top of my head.
It is a movie called Arnold's Wrecking Co., which I had never heard of until I looked at this because I was like, is this his first movie? Because as I've been tracking Van Damme films, he's worked with several filmmakers making their first U.S. film. So I was like, I'm wondering if this is a first as well. Not quite, but pretty close. Sophomore effort, and then this was the last movie he actually directed, sadly. And that's not fair. This is not his fault. So, but okay. Question 2. Jean-Claude Van Damme turned down a role in what other video game adaptation to take this role?
I want to say Mortal Kombat.
Bingo. He was offered the role of Johnny Cage, and he decided no. I'm guessing probably because Johnny Cage was not the main character of that film. He would have had to split a little bit too much screen time, but we do get the splits ball punch still in that movie. So I guess it all works itself out. But yeah, I feel like Johnny Cage was designed behind the idea of Van Damme. So it would make perfect sense to have him be that character. But, you know, he ultimately chose Street Fighter, and for better or worse, it is what it is. We got this movie out of it, so I'm happy. Okay, so question 3, third and final trivia question. Despite being panned, the movie was profitable. And according to DeSouza, Capcom was very happy with the project. And in 2003, a sequel was in development with several cast members, including Van Damme, set to reprise their roles. However, the project never materialized, and the plans were scrapped in favor of what film?
What video game film, or just what film in general?
Well, what video game film, yes.
I'll
give you a hint. It's not too far off IP-wise.
Tekken?
No, it was the Legend of Chun-Li Street Fighter movie that came out in 2009.
Okay.
So I guess the rights had reverted to Fox because Universal couldn't get the sequel greenlit. And when it went back to Fox, they're like, yeah, we're just going to reboot this movie. And I heard that Van Damme was also offered the role of Guile in that movie and turned it down too.
That would have. So I've actually, truth be told, I've actually seen that. I've seen part. I didn't watch the whole thing. I caught the last 20 minutes, and I thought to myself, this has to be some of the worst filmmaking.
I mean, I prefer
would even go
this one.
say worse. than Street Fighter did.
Somehow it's like it was newer. It had sort of like all of the things you would want, I think, theoretically, to make a better Street Fighter film. But when you're taking yourself too seriously, making a movie based on Street Fighter, you lead yourself into some unfortunate pitfalls. I prefer this movie because it's bad, but it's like confidently bad. It's not afraid to make these sort of mistakes and to have these big, colorful, ridiculous villains. It's not trying to take itself too seriously. There's definitely moments where I'm like, does it want to be serious? Does it not want to be? Like, we get Guile's assassination moment where they like fake his death, but then all the paramedics show up and just check his pulse and like, guess he's dead. Like, wait a second, you didn't even put him on the stretcher in the ambulance or anything. You're just, we're just going to sit here and watch him die. Not very good paramedics in that case. So we get a lot of weird stuff like that. But I think for the most part, Van Damme has pretty solid like comedic sensibilities as an actor. And I think that was important to this role because you know that you can't take this overly serious. So he's serious enough when you need the rah-rah moments, but he's also like goofy enough where he's gonna flex his bicep with the American flag on it at you, and he's gonna like whip out his knife and threaten a bunch of guys with guns. Like, there's just enough there for him to like use his sense of humor and not get carried away. All right, well, that's the end of trivia section. So you're going to get one bonus spin on the wheel when we get there. I haven't actually developed the wheel yet, so I just have these questions like laid to the side. This is all stuff that I thought of last night while watching the movie. I was like, this is a good idea. I want to work this into the show, but I don't have time this morning to actually figure this out. So we're going to do a little test run here. But before that, I want to give you the opportunity to sort of talk about anything that stood out to you about this movie that you wanted to bring to the show that we didn't get a chance to talk about yet, I should say.
No, I think I think that I think we've covered everything. Like it's a campy film. Van Damme brings just enough to it. Julia's performance is the one that shines here. It's a little overstuffed here and there. It's one of those things where, to your point, it could have been a little more biting per se, but we got it in the third act. And for what it was worth, it's not a terrible movie. It's not a horrible movie. This isn't, oh my God, I got to close my eyes for 90 minutes, but it's not a fantastic, this is a perfect video game adaptation movie. So, it falls somewhere in between there. And it always is interesting to see how films age over the time. I'll be curious to see what happens in another 10 years, right? Like, how is this when we get to, or even 20 years, when we get to the 50th anniversary of this, how is the new generation going to receive it? So, but yeah, I had a good time. I had a blast with it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where its reputation precedes it. And then I think the more distance you get from it, the easier it is to accept it for what it is. Because as a kid, I never thought of it as a comedy. As an adult, I definitely think of it as a comedy. And we get stuff like the hostage pit opening and closing, right? The fact that he just has a hostage pit that is like designated hostage pit. And then he has like Siri coming over the intercom saying like hostage pit now closing. Like, what in what universe like is this stuff lining up? And then you have the voiceover sort of in the background. You hear like whoever that voice assistant is like, attention all troopers, remember that maintaining your health plan benefits is your responsibility. Like, Bison's has employees basically that have health plans and that they are responsible for actually maintaining their health plan. Like, so all of those things folded into this movie is just like crazy to me. Like, that you would take the time to add that in there. And then we get like this hand job joke between Balrog and E Honda in jail. And I was like, wait a second, I've never caught that the entire time. Like, I've seen this movie multiple times since 94. And I think Balrog, they're both chained up. He tells him, give me your hand. He says, we've only been in jail 2 hours, maybe next month. And I was like, whoa, I did not expect that to be in this movie here. But that just tells me that, you have to have a sense of humor about like just getting involved with this project to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, just things like that. And I think that what they were trying to go for was action, intense film, but comedy,
Yeah.
a little comedy here and there. That way, you're not getting hit over the head, literally action, 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 action. You need a little comic relief in every type of film. And the Surrey, the hostage pitch clothing, things like that kind of really make that happen.
Yeah, they lighten the
Because you
mood
didn't
a
really
little
have a
bit.
character to do that for you.
No. Not so much. I mean, I think you could have, and you just decided to mostly not. And that's okay. Like you didn't need a comic relief character here, but I like that it's sort of sprinkled in the background of the movie. Like we know that what we're making is silly and we're gonna have fun with it, but we kind of don't want to make that the lead foot in this. Like we don't want to bill it as a comedy. And I don't even think the listing here says action adventure. Oh, okay, it is listed as a comedy still. So I guess in time that has changed a little bit. The trailer doesn't sell it as a comedy though. Interesting.
No, definitely not.
Um,
Well, once
and
again, the trailer has very little, if no dialogue.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
just
there's
things
like 5 minutes
exploding.
of dialogue throughout the whole thing. That was a minute 42. Today, you'd have a whole minute 42 of just, or like a full minute of dialogue. One major scene and everything else, and it's like, okay, cool. So
Yeah. I will add that one of I think the funnier things in this as well is like it's a little Easter egg where the Bison is using his underwater mines to try to take out the stealth boat, and we get of course the arcade controller console with the joystick and the 6 buttons, right? So the Easter egg for
I
the
love
Street
that.
Fighter players
Or
out there.
I'll do you one better. There was a couple of barrels that said Capcom on the side of it.
I saw that, yeah. When they put
Yeah.
Chun-Li in that barrel, it said Capcom on the top. But
Yeah.
what I love about the joystick thing is that Bison is a total button masher. Like Street
He's a
Fighter,
spammer, isn't he? A total spammer.
Street Fighter is a game that, like, if you play it enough, like you can play it and get away with like not really knowing the game. But like the more you know the game, like the mechanics are actually very intricate, which is what makes Street Fighter such a good game over all these years. That the fighting mechanics are excellent and very well thought out. So to see Bison just sort of like slamming all the buttons at once, I thought was a little tongue in cheek, like a wink and a nod that even though he's like this powerful character and even maybe the most powerful character in the game, he's the boss of the game, he's a button masher.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's see. I think now is a good time to do Critics Corner.
There we go.
And we will get to read all of the very unfriendly things that were said about this movie from the critics. And it has a 34 overall. That is the board that we're working off of. And we've got 2 20s on the board. So we start with Time Out and Austin Chronicle are the 2. I'll let you choose which one you want to go with.
Go with one of the 20s to start.
Yeah, do you want to do Austin? You want to do Austin Chronicle or Time Out?
Oh, let's go with the Chronicle.
Okay, Austin Chronicle. This is Mark Savlov. I think I just read him on the last episode I recorded. He says, it's hard to give a damn one way or another about Street Fighter. It's so thin that an errant sneeze might topple this glossy house of cards. I'm surprised he was nice enough to say that the house of cards was glossy.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that, yeah. By the way, I'm just curious, how many reviews were there for this?
Probably more than what I'm looking at, but the ones provided here, let's see, Metacritic has 21. So
that's okay.
Yeah, that's decent. There's not all 21 of them are here, but those are the ones that Metacritic has access to. So let's go. We climb the board. We go to the Los Angeles Times, and they gave it a 30. There is nobody's name on this, and it just says if the story isn't quite incoherent, then DeSouza's klutzy direction renders it so. So just another person that didn't like the movie. I mean, the story is fairly coherent for what it is, like dictator trying to take over the world, kidnapping plot, military forces coming to take him down. Like if you really start thinking about like just the basic bare bones of it, like it's pretty straightforward. So I don't necessarily think that it's as incoherent as he's making it out to be, or whoever this person is that wrote the article. But
that's why they didn't put their name on it.
I know, just like please do not acknowledge
Own up
that
to
I
your
saw
work.
this movie. Okay, we've got, let's see, a 37 and a 38. So the 38 is from the Seattle Times, the 37 is from the Washington Post. I'll let you go ahead and choose which one we want to hang ourselves with.
Let's go with the 37.
37, Washington Post. Richard Harrington says, "What can you say when a video game is more exciting and entertaining than the big budget feature film it inspires?" So, a little mean, but understanding that the game itself has elements that make it entertaining that the movie just doesn't adhere to, which we talked about. You know, the movie doesn't become this like fight tournament style of film, and something that Mortal Kombat did much better. So I don't think it's necessarily unfair. I probably have seen Street Fighter enough overall to say that I can find it entertaining. Like if I just boiled down total amount of hours playing Street Fighter versus total amount of hours watching Street Fighter, it's probably close, to be honest. And it's not like I don't. I mean, I don't really play Street Fighter anymore, but there was a time where I was playing it a lot more than I am currently. So it probably totaled more hours, but I've seen Street Fighter at least 5 or 6 times and got to watch it again last night. So it's closer than it would be for the average person. I'd say the average person who plays Street Fighter probably has like, it's at least 20-1 in terms of hours spent, where it's not that big of a disparity for me because I'm more of a movie guy anyway. Okay. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3 40s on the board. New York Times, Variety, and TV Guide magazine.
I gotta hear what the Times said.
All right, New York Times, Stephen Holden. He says, as Mr. Van Damme fumbles through his part, you are likely to find yourself staring at the big lump on the right side of his forehead and wondering how it got there. No, at no point did I start to wonder that. I mean, it is kind of shiny, like when you get later in the movie, it's pretty pronounced, but I'm not really ever staring at it. Is that not something that's been there for longer in his career?
I never noticed it. I never noticed it. And the reason why I chose the Times is because you know what TV Guide, those are entertainment outlets.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a different perspective. But the New York Times, you know, they're hard hitting. They're newsworthy, you know. So it's like, it's always fascinating to hear a hard hitting, newsworthy organization like the Times go in and just rip apart a movie like Street Fighter.
Yeah, I'm sure Stephen Holden was not a fan of having to watch this movie at all, so I'm not surprised that he gave it a 40, but we'll move up the ladder and we'll move on to Polygon. Again, this is not credited, but they gave it a 60, and it says, for a product of its time, a decade full of video game-inspired stinkers, it's worth looking back on, especially because it's obvious how much fun the cast is having. There you go. So it's like
that's
perfect.
A very adequate assessment, I think.
I think so. I think it's adept enough to see that the movie is not great, but considering that a bunch of other movies that were sort of being developed around the same time are also not great, this movie has fun things that it brings to the table, and you can have fun with it, I think is the bottom line. So good for you, Polygon. I wish I had somebody's, credited name there to call out, but I don't. So we're going to move on to the final score on the board. It's a 63. So it's not that high, but it's still in the green territory because it passed the 60 threshold. And this is John Petrakis from the Chicago Tribune. He says, it is beautifully shot, and the production design is first rate. Another strong point is the presence of some excellent actors in small roles. Unfortunately, they all have to work opposite Van Damme, who keeps trying to be witty and smart, but still comes across as a bit of a lunk. So, okay.
Yeah, okay.
No praise for Raul Julia from any of
I was
these
just going to
people,
say
though?
that.
Not a single one of
Julia
you?
is the crown jewel of this whole movie. And there's no mention of him. I don't understand it.
Yeah. I'm curious if just like at the time this was happening, they looked at his portrayal of the character like, he's playing Bison as a real character.
Right.
And nobody else in the movie is really like taking their character that seriously. So it is out of place in that way, but like he's still the best part of the movie. Like he's still the most entertaining thing on screen every time he's on the screen. So yeah, it's very strange that not a single one of these mentions him by name, and especially like we've talked about this a little bit at length at this point. Like he was dying when he did this movie, and he still gave us a performance like this. So I mean, he deserves all the credit in the world for that.
I mean, and by the way, I would even go so far as to say he's why even this movie is relevant. Meaning, let's face it. I mean, when we talk about Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, okay, whether it's Kickboxer or Sudden Impact or Bloodsport, this isn't a movie that you think about when you talk about Jean-Claude Van Damme, because you're talking about all these other ones. And the fact that you have a unbelievable performance by Julia that we've made mention about over and over and over, that gets left out or it's non-existent or pushed by the wayside, it just blows my mind. And I think maybe that's because, he was on the cover. I mean, when you look at the cover, when you look at the Street Fighter poster, I mean, it just has a big thing of the symbol of Street Fighter and all these little, characters on the side. And it's like, yeah, it has the names on the top, but it's not like you have these two opposing faces going at each other type of thing. And I think that's the thing too, that when you don't have, and the marketing too, I mean, that's a whole other thing for another time, but you don't have these two opposing faces going at each other, So I think that could be a reason why he was left out.
Yeah, I'm because I have the poster up right now, and it's just like a gigantic picture of Van Damme's face.
Yeah.
And it's like Jean-Claude Van Damme and then a bunch of other tiny little people. So it's not showcasing it as a movie that is like, hey, come and see this whole cast of Street Fighter characters. It's like, come watch Jean-Claude be in a Street Fighter movie. And that's kind of like where the marketing maybe misaligns with what the movie is. But yeah, like you said, if there's a Van Damme on one side, Julia on the other, and it's like a stare down, face off, like you would see like at a boxing, promotion or something like that. Then all the other characters on the bottom, then maybe we get something a little bit more noticeable.
So there was a really fascinating, I don't even know if it's still on YouTube. There was a really fascinating YouTube documentary. I want to say it's called 31 by 46 or 46 by 31, a documentary about movie posters. And it talks, it's about an hour and a half. It's free on YouTube, but it talks all about the history of movie posters and how they were hand-drawn back in the 30s, and you have these 3 pieces and everything else, and where they came from. And if you go back and notice, especially over the last 30 or 40 years, there are really only about 7 or 8 major framing ways that posters are used. In the 2 main examples I'm going to use is take Gone with the Wind back in 1939, and then take Empire Strikes Back. So, I mean, what they'll do is, and then what they could have done with Street Fighter, for example, is you had, Avengers Infinity War, and then you had something like, you could have done the same thing with Street Fighter. And so you're seeing all these things in all of these movie posters. When you look at the marketing and everything else, and you go, oh, that kind of looks like that. Oh, that kind of looks like that. But it's a fascinating way to look at movies and movie posters and how they're made. So getting back to the point about that, they could have had something like that, and it could have been done much better.
Yeah, I mean, this is fairly generic from what I'm looking at. I mean, we know that it's a Jean-Claude movie. So aside from that, like, okay, there's the title, there's his face, and some spaceship looking thing that Raul Julia is
and the
flying.
last thing I'll say is this. You take a look at all these other pictures that he's done, Sudden Impact, Kickboxer, Bloodsport. What's the one thing you see? It's just Van Damme.
Yeah, mostly.
So
typically doing like a kick or a pose or something.
Exactly. So that being said, I think that this is just another one of those movies that it's just okay. Slap his face on there, slap the logo on there, put everybody in the background, done. Put the 2 headline names, done. Very simple, very generic, very basic.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious if there's like, a lot of people end up doing like alternate posters, fan art style posters, which sometimes are like really good. I saw one for Don't Worry Darling, which I was using to sort of, share around when I was rewatching that for another episode that I was recording. And I was like, this poster is so much better than the one that they gave us, that like I'm looking at this poster. I'm like, this is a movie that like I'm interested in watching because of the poster design. And it's sort of just like a lost art nowadays too. So I'm gonna try to check out that documentary this week because it sounds very interesting.
the other thing too is if you ever really want to, I have like 5 of them. I only have one hanging up behind me, but it's called Displate, and they're
Display.
actually so they make them. Okay, they're from overseas. You can get pretty much any movie made, or they have any movie. I mean, I have Pulp Fiction, I have Rounders, I have Training Day. I think I have a couple of other films, and they're all third type of posters.
You said it was a Displate?
Displate, Displate.
All right.
If you're a new user, I think they give you like 25% off, or I don't know what kind of deal they have now, but I'm sure if you're a first time user, you'll get some sort of deal.
Cool. So buy in bulk, people.
I bought all 5 of those together.
Well, there you go. Make sure you get the money's
like,
worth.
so
cool. Well, thank you
yeah.
for sharing that. I appreciate it. Sorry,
welcome.
everybody at home, you're not going to be able to see that, but
yeah.
so I'm going to put the link for you in the show notes, and then you can check and browse at your own leisure.
But movie posters, I think, are so important to the marketing of a film, and because we can all watch trailers, but it's when you go to the movie theater and go, "Oh, that looks really cool," and that brings out, and even in other countries, like it's so fascinating to see movie posters in, let's say, France or Germany or wherever, Austria, compared to the United States.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm going to check it out.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you the first question. What is a good gateway drug for Street Fighter? So somebody who hasn't seen Street Fighter, what's a movie that's in the neighborhood that might, convince them to take a chance on this? Or for someone who likes Street Fighter, what's something close by that you might recommend?
1995 Mortal Kombat. It is the absolute, I know it sounds the generic answer, but it is the you're going to see a lot of things in Mortal Kombat that are done right that Street Fighter doesn't do well. And you're going to see things that it's the same apples to apples type of movie. You have a big bad, you have your heroes, you have your conflict, but it's the same thing. And
impending
they do it much
takeover.
Better. Yeah, exactly. And then Street Fighter. So yeah, if you're gonna ever take a chance on the '94 Street Fighter, take a look at the '95. And by the way, the soundtrack's incredible.
It is. It's a lot of fun too, and I think also Mortal Kombat is not like burdened by the casting of Van Damme. Like you just get to have people that are like good for the role. You just had the best person for the role, and nobody is like a superstar in that movie. So there's
Christopher Lambert is perfect.
He's great, but it's like, he's
great.
He's not even bringing in like the kind of ego. Like he's maybe the biggest name in the cast at that point, and he doesn't have the ego about it where the whole movie then has to become about Raiden, right? It still is about this trio of characters, and I think sort of splitting the heroic arc amongst the 3 of them really works for Mortal Kombat in a way where this one, like Street Fighter, is much more heavily focused on like Guile versus M. Bison showdown, where Mortal Kombat spreads that out amongst their cast, and it works better that way. And then like Sub-Zero, Scorpion, like these guys don't even like show their face ever really, so they just get to be sort of ninjas with superpowers, and that's good. So you get Goro, good like makeup villain effects. Mortal Kombat is a great comp. I mean, it's obviously the one that is right there. I don't even know if I could think of one off the top of my head, at least a fighting tournament one, but I would say the movies that like it definitely reminded me of Mario Brothers because they sort of like exist in the same physical kind of reality. And the more I've been watching Van Damme movies, it feels like all of his movies are like versions of other movies. And I kept thinking Austin Powers.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
It doesn't quite pull the trigger all the way, like committing to being a comedy. But if you were to replace Guile with Austin Powers, I think the movie works because of Raul Julia's performance as M. Bison. I feel like it's an Austin Powers like cousin or something. So I think that might be a good way to get people to maybe take a chance on this if they haven't. But you got one of the trivia questions right, so we get to spin the wheel. And we're going to go with a bonus question. And because we talked about dream casting a little bit, if you could replace one person in Street Fighter with a different actor, who would that be and why?
I'm going to go really basic here on you, Nick. I'm going to go Chuck Norris with Van Damme, and he's going to play Guile. Because I think that even just for the martial arts ability, because don't forget, Norris back in the 80s not only was a huge war, he's done war movies and like Missing in Action in the beginning, but he also did Invasion USA, which was essentially the same premise as like a Red Dawn, which was the same year in 84. But I think he could bring a whole other. Look, it's not about the cheerleading aspect of it. We know that they're rah rah, go team, go America, let's go get this guy. I think he could, the martial arts and everything else, and you're getting a little bit more with Norris. I think you might even get a little more empathy, believe it or not. I'm not saying that Jean-Claude didn't bring some, but he's also, the thing about Chuck Norris is he was able to do comedies. He's able to do a show like Walker, Texas Ranger and everything else. So I think he might get a little more empathy.
Yeah,
so that would be the one thing.
That's a good one. I think his energy is a little bit more measured too. Like just in the way he is on screen, he's just more balanced. He doesn't have like these huge peaks and valleys like Van Damme does. And I think for a character like Guile, who's supposed to be like military background, and like if you want them to be like the stoic hero, I think Norris fits that bill well. I hadn't really thought much about this question until I just asked you, and I want to see Dolph Lundgren as Guile because he's big, blonde, buff as well. He's had the flat top before for Rocky, so I know that he can pull that part off. He's also a Kyokushin karate black belt, so he's got the chops with the kicking game. 2-time European champion, I think, in Kyokushin karate as well. Smart guy, never really like got the opportunity to be the lead in a bunch of sort of big projects like this. So yeah, I mean, and he's foreign too, but I feel like his accent would be like less oppressive to the character of Guile than Van Damme's in this one. So I could totally see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I love how speaking of Lundgren, I love the fact that he was able to lean into this character in the Expendables.
Yeah.
Like how he has the glasses, especially in his Expendables 4 was terrible, but it's like he leans into it, with the glasses and like, with the scope, and he's like, oh no, it's a prescription scope, type of thing. But he comes across as a very bright guy, like you said.
Yeah, he is.
Tall, I could definitely see him.
Yeah, I think, I don't think he's quite like a nuclear physicist, but like he studied at MIT and like all these prestigious science schools. And like he's a very, very smart guy, but he's always sort of been pigeonholed into like the big villain. And, we had just talked about Universal Soldier for the first film in June-Claude Van Damme. And like Lundgren is to that movie sort of like what Julia is to this movie, in that like he's buying into the idea of this character and having a ton of fun with it. Whereas like it seems like maybe a little bit out of place for the rest of the movie, because when he's in the supermarket in Universal Soldier and like he's just got everybody captive and like his PTSD is raging and his partner's over there like eating raw meat behind the counter, like everybody's terrified. And I'm like, this part of the movie is amazing. Dolph Lundgren is so good. We should have gotten more from him when he was in his prime. So I'm glad for any opportunity that he has, but I'm really ready to like deep dive a really B movie centric Dolph Lundgren experience, because that's a lot of what he did as the lead. I think, Blackjack was a movie that was brought to my attention, which I haven't seen, but it looks amazing. Slits a guy's throat with like a ace of spades, does some spinning back kicks. So I think maybe I'm going to do like Winters and Lundgren and do a specific Dolph Lundgren subset of films later in the year. I think the more I talk about him, the more I want to do it. So I think I've got the motivation. Yeah, he's
like,
good.
To your point, Creed 2. Now, I'll suggest it was the third out of the three, but his bringing even that scene in the restaurant, okay, for when he comes back and, because his son's going to fight, Adonis and everything else. And when he's sitting down with Stallone in the restaurant, now it's not De Niro and Pacino in the coffee shop in Heat, but it's one of those when you have a one-on-one confrontation, especially like they did in Rocky IV, and then come back and you're able to revisit that same intensity and have that same amount of emotion at that, sitting down after all these years, and you can still feel the tension in the air, and it's palpable, and it's like, wow, this is a really cool scene. And these are two old, they're both fighters. They both can relate. He's training his son, he's training Adonis, and it's just like, wow. But no, to your point, Dolph Lundgren is fantastic. And that's his crowning jewel in that scene, but the whole movie's fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be weird if the one thing that spins out of Jean-Claude Van Damme is me just pushing like pro Dolph Lundgren agenda for the rest of the year because he's great and very underutilized throughout a lot of his career. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna find a way. But yeah, so I appreciate you answering our little bonus question there. I'm gonna work on more of those questions for the future, so that way I've got like a real dense wheel of these questions to spin, and hopefully we get some good answers out of all of them. But I want to give you the chance to, plug what you're working on, let people know where they can find you.
Thank you very much. So you can find me on YouTube. So I have a channel. It's called Real Talks. That's REEL Talks with David Steele. So on the channel you're going to be able to see a couple different series. The Perfect Movie series I'm doing. It's a monthly series. These are films that. So the first thing I say is that film's subjective, but the Perfect Movie series I talk about are all critically acclaimed films. I'm talking about Silence of the Lambs, Spotlight, The Social Network, Heat, everything else. I have a bunch of movies, Empire Strikes Back. So that's usually like a monthly type of thing for me. This year, what I've decided to do is step away from like the entertainment news and hit the retrospectives. So, of course, this is turning 30. I've done films such as Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I did Quiz Show. I did Natural Born Killers. Street Fighter. I'm taking a break from those right now, and I'm going to be getting more of those ready to go. And it's not just 30 or 40. I'm going to be doing Joker in October in lieu of the new Joker film. We've got things like Charlie's Angels, which came out 5 years ago. Bunch of other films. So I'm doing retrospectives. I also have another series on the channel that I'm trying to get up and going called Anatomy of a Movie. What I'm doing there is I'm breaking down some of the most iconic scenes in film. Most recently, the last one I did a couple months ago is Heat. Of course, the iconic diner scene I was just referencing a couple minutes earlier. So what I do is I let the scene run, and then after everything, I will give my thoughts, and I'll dissect the scene for you guys and where I think Michael Mann was going and what he was thinking, and then I'll give my opinion on it. And I've got a couple of other things that I'm trying to work on. So, and that's not to mention, guys, I also am trying to cover new movies. So I haven't done any this year. My goal is to get back ready to rock and roll for the 25th of July. Work pending, and going to be going back strong with Deadpool and Wolverine. And then throughout the year, going to be going with the retrospectives.
Nice.
So.
Sounds like fun. Yeah, and the perfect movies is like, for anybody out there, it's like the opposite of this show, where we only talk about like the junk that fell into the trash heap. The perfect movies is stuff that is all critically acclaimed stuff. So a much broader spectrum of good movies than we get to talk about here. But David, I want to thank you sincerely for your time and for your attention, and really just giving me like a reason to go back and watch a movie that I love from many, many years ago, and to still, while being able to recognize that this movie's got a lot of issues. And if someone told me it's garbage, I would say, you know what? I understand. And at the same time, being able to recognize that, one person's trash is another person's treasure. And that's sort of the motto I've got to live by, because this movie is still just so much fun. I think if you watch it as a comedy and can just put the seriousness aside, you will have a lot of fun with it. So thank you so much for being here.
I thank you very much. And it's why I always say film is subjective, right? Because what you just said, while something else may be trash to one person, this is absolute gold to both of us.
Yeah.
And we've loved, we've been doing this for 2 hours and it's just absolute gold. And we've been talking about this and just reminiscing and getting all the kicks and the jokes and everything else. And that's fine. And that's why I always, to each their own. And, I love movies and he loves movies. And as long as it's kept out there and know what it is, and that's the big thing, then you enjoy it. But I want to thank you, Nick, for inviting me on, because this has been a blast. And it
has been.
I'm getting back in the swing of things, guys. And this makes me want to jumpstart things. And I can't wait for this episode to come out.
Yeah, well, it's going to be out pretty soon. I think I've got like 2 days to edit it and get it ready for Friday. It's like I have a concert Friday night, so I'm hopeful that I get it done Friday. But if not, it'll be out on Saturday and be good to go.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. All right.
You the same.
Take care. Thank you to David for coming on the show with me and talking about a movie in Street Fighter that I hadn't seen in quite some time, but we obviously had a lot of fun talking about it. And if you had fun listening to us talk, you can check out David's stuff over at the Real Talks channel on YouTube, and you can find Real Talks on Spotify. And if you want to talk to David on X, you can find him at Wannabe Rounder. Fear not, all that info is going into the show notes for you. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to this episode. I know you have a lot of choices when it comes to podcasts, and I appreciate you spending your time with us. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you do, please consider leaving a rating on your podcast platform of choice and telling a friend about it. And the support page is now live over at ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/badmovieswelove. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have a bad movie you love or would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact me at badmovieswelove@theshice.com or at badmovieswelove on Twitter and Instagram. And that's love with an LUV on the socials. And until next time, take care, be well, and have fun however you get your movies.